And this is still Breakfast Central, getting straight into our next conversation. And we start like this. Beginning tomorrow, every day, I will tweet one law that discriminates against women, especially in African countries. I want to see when I run out of material. Those were the words that started a social media campaign and journey for our next guest. Now posted on her Twitter account in May 2020 with those words, she also started a conversation about sexism and how the law enables it.
Now, it's been almost a year now, and the women behind the account is they're still at it. She has now expanded the scope of that tweet to laws, not just in Africa, but across the globe, that undermine women as human beings and dictate their citizenship, marriage, business, industry, inheritance, and movement. Now, while we celebrated International Women's Day on March the 8th, the entire month of March is all about Women's History Month, and annually. Now, the month highlights the contributions of women and their events in history and contemporary society.
Amarachi Nickabugu now joins us to discuss why she embarked on this social media journey and what she has learned so far. Amarachi, good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. So that tweet, I've told everyone, it personally caught my attention when you tweeted it sometime in May in 2020. And I was thinking to myself, okay, probably in 6 months or so she'll be done. But this is more than 6 months later. This is close to a year later. And you are still able to tweet every single day. So first of all, why did you start to document laws that discriminate against women in Africa? How did this come up to you?
It was a spur of the moment decision for me. I just had a conversation with someone, and I realized that there was this recurring theme of people thinking that gender inequality is exclusively a social issue. So as a person who has studied law for a few years now, I have come to realize that gender inequality also permeates the way we make law. Like, our laws are unfriendly to women in industry, in family, in governance, in politics, in basically almost everything. And it's not just a Nigerian thing. So I needed people to understand that sexism and misogyny is so pervasive that it affects not just the way we behave in our homes or our religious centers, but also the way the state itself treats women and men differently.
Wow. I'm looking at the tweet right now. It says the civil code in force in Equatorial Guinea limits the contractual capacity of women. A married woman is required to obtain the permission of her husband to sign a contract. Now, this is quite an interesting one, Amarachi. So what makes it important for you that these laws are documented?
There is a general understanding that everyone is equal before the law. In fact, equality before the law is like one of the central tenets of legal jurisprudence. I think everybody believes that to be a general fact. That's why sometimes we say that, for instance, that the courts or the law is the last hope of the common man, because even if everybody treats you unfairly, the law will not treat you unfairly. However, it's almost shameful. In fact, it's shameful to see that the courts are armed with laws that do not treat a certain class of society fairly. Like, if the law be against us, it's as good as saying we are this close to being hopeless. So I need to demonstrate to people that this law we keep saying treats everybody equally does not actually treat everybody equally. And it's a very, very big problem.
Yeah, this one from Algeria, a man who abducts a minor can avoid legal punishment by marrying his victim. And for many people, they don't know that in 2021, this is something that some African countries and Middle Eastern countries are still fighting. And it's just now that some of these laws are starting to change. So Amarachi, since you started this project, this media campaign, there has been some interesting surprises and reactions. I've seen some of the reactions when people are reacting to your tweet of the day, as we might call it. But in terms of the conversation you've also generated on a debate on equality or inequality, as it may be, what are some of the reactions you've gotten that have really stuck out to you in terms of how we as Africans have sort of observed the laws that are made for women, or rather against women?
Generally, the reaction I get most of the time when I tweet these things is surprise. A lot of people they simply do not know that laws like this exist. But every now and then I get I see someone who tries to argue that a certain law on that list is not discriminatory. And this happens often when there are laws that are, so to say, supposed to protect women. For example, laws that say women cannot work certain hours, or laws that say women cannot work in certain industries. Yes, so those laws, some people make an argument that those laws are supposed to protect women. And I feel like I have to reiterate the point over and over again that women's rights are human rights, and human rights are inherent and they are non-negotiable. So it is not up to the state to ask us as women to forego our rights to choose a profession, to practice freely in an occupation because they want to protect us. Let me take a typical example. It hasn't been so long that we felt the impact of anti-police brutality protests in Nigeria, the NSAS protests. Now, most of the victims of NSAS protests, most of the victims of the SARS brutality are men. Most of the time, people who are arrested and tortured and kidnapped and sometimes even killed are men. There are female victims, but majority are men. That is a known fact. Imagine if you hit the streets and say the government should ask the police to stop killing us, equip the police to respond civilly and to protect and respect our rights. And the government says, you know what, instead of just equipping the police to protect you better, they're going to ban you from using iPhones. If iPhones are the problem, iPhones are not the problem, but you're going to ban you from going out at night, from driving Mercedes cars. That would be an infringement of our rights. It may ultimately appear to lead to a decline in police brutality, but what the state has done is to rob you of your rights. Now, going back to the tweets about gender inequality, when you see a law, it happens, a lot of countries have laws like that say women cannot work in mining or women cannot work at night. And people argue, well, it protects women. And the answer is, it does not protect women. It does not. If a work environment is unsafe for women, it is left to the state to make it safe for women, not to remove women from accessing that opportunity.
Wow.
So every now and then, I guess people make that argument, and I feel like I have to say it over and over again, that women's rights are human rights. And it's not left for the state to abrogate our rights when it's convenient for them. Because lawmaking is a process that requires critical thought. You do not approach lawmaking by offering simplistic and convenient solutions to problems. We say women are unsafe on the streets. There is street harassment. You don't come up and say, oh, you know what, women should stop dressing a certain way or stop going to certain places. No, you find the harassment source and you take it out.
Well, Amarachi, there's a tweet I just saw now in regards to Nigeria, where it says women cannot work certain, is it night shift? Or this one talks about Section 55 and all that of the Penal Code, applicable in northern Nigeria, makes it lawful for a man to beat his wife for the purpose of, quote, correcting her. Clearly, these laws are not written by women. They are written by men, for men, and against women. So where do we go in addressing this? How do we start addressing these laws? Because clearly they are almost not suited for purpose, archaic, colonial, and basically backwards.
In addressing these laws, it may sound like a cliche thing, but we actually do need women in power. There are certain issues that you understand better when you experience them. And it's so unfortunate that the experiences of men and women are polarized in a way that a certain divide in this society they just don't seem to have enough empathy to put themselves in the shoes of women or other marginalized groups, for that matter. So I think basically we need more women in positions of authority. We need progressive thinking women. We need women who are equipped to understand the problems that women face in society and to think critically about solving it in a way that actually solves the problem, not hides the problem. For example, the NDLEA, there is a requirement that if you're doing visa clearance to travel to certain countries, like Thailand, for instance, you need NDLEA clearance. The NDLEA is Nigeria's drug law agency. Now, if a married woman wants to get NDLEA clearance, they ask her to get a letter of consent from her husband. Now, I was privileged to get this information from someone who works there, and the person tried to justify that rule. And he said that what happens is that sometimes they've had cases of people luring women into drug trafficking, and the families don't know. So what they do is, if a woman wants to travel to these countries that have very tight drug laws, they ask the husband to endorse that her travel, so that the husband is aware of where she's going. But it doesn't solve the problem. It just does not solve the problem, because what the state has done ultimately is to hinge a married woman's freedom of movement on the kindness of her husband. If you have a bad husband, you just can't travel to Thailand.
Yeah.
That's what it means eventually. And even if you have a good husband, why should I have to subject my fundamental rights to another person's benevolence? It doesn't make sense. So I have to say it over and over again that human rights are non-negotiable, and women's rights qualify as human rights. So the state should stop looking at women's rights as an act of benevolence that they can just take away from you when it's convenient for them. If it's convenient for them to just say, men should not do this, just so that other people are more comfortable, or so that they avoid the real work that comes with lawmaking. They do it like that, and that's not okay. It simply is not right. Like, we treat women's rights as something that is negotiable and disposable.
Yeah, so just on the screen now, we had one from Saudi Arabia, where if a woman is in prison and she has finished her term, the law requires the permission of a male guardian for her to leave prison. So if she completes her term of imprisonment or detention, if the male guardian has not signed off on her leaving, she can stay there more time. And Amarachi, let me just tell you, some of these laws boggle the mind. And some people would say these came about at a time before enlightenment, before we were saying that women's rights were human rights. But now the question has to be, why are we still seeing these clearly discriminatory, outdated, not fit for purpose? It was that they were never fit for purpose, but not fit for purpose in the 24th century. Why are these laws still on the books? Why does it seem so difficult for countries across Africa, across the Middle East, and yes, even in some parts of the West, there are interesting laws like this, to get these laws off the books? Why is change so difficult in regards to this?
I think that fundamentally, human beings generally are not very receptive to changing status quo, especially if they benefit from status quo. So these laws that cage women, restrict women, imprison women, impede their rights, draw lines what they can't cross, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't say this, you can't wear that. They do it to the benefit of another sector of the society. Somewhere, someone is benefiting from the fact that women are being put down. And unfortunately, we saw a double jeopardy, because that someone who is benefiting happens also to be the person who is in power. So if a person is benefiting from a wrongdoing, from a bad tradition, it's not easy to convince him to relinquish his power so that somebody else can have it more fairly. I think it's just the way of human beings generally. So this is why I say that sometimes, if not most times, it's necessary that people who suffer marginalization in society understand that they have to grab what is theirs and they have to do it by force. In the Nigerian society, for instance, marital rape is not a crime. In Saudi Arabia, women need permission of a guardian to do the most basic things, sometimes even to receive government services. It's inhumane. But those people who qualify as guardians of women, the husbands, the fathers, the brothers, the uncles, the paternal grandfathers, they are comfortable with it. They want to be able to tell you, if you behave a certain way, I won't let you go to school, I won't let you travel. People are benefiting from it. So when someone or a class of people are benefiting from dysfunction, it's not easy to convince them to let go. So we need to go back to a stage. We need to go back to a stage where women, first and foremost, get this sense of self-awareness that there is something fundamentally wrong with the way society treats me. And if they don't give up this horrible, bad attitude of looking at me as less, I am going to grab it, and I'm going to grab it by force. Because like they would say, the oppressor never gives up power without a fight.
Very true.
People fought and people died for women to get something as basic as the right to vote. So for us to get to a point where marital rape is a crime, women can work in every industry they want, in the military forces, men and women are treated equally, have equal opportunities. For us to get to that point, some people need to get uncomfortable. And they will get uncomfortable by me just sitting in my room and thinking about it. They'll get uncomfortable by they see me in the office every day, asking them, as a lawmaker representing me, what are you going to do about this? I am not happy to be you until do something about it.
Well,
Amarachi,
Amarachi Nickabugu, we can go on and on because this is clearly a topic that, you know, hits the thread and hits the hammer on the nails. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, Breakfast Central. I'm sure we'll have you once again on this matter.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And you can follow Amarachi's documentation of discriminatory laws against women on her social media timeline. We'll share a tweet from her again later on as we're wrapping up the show. But really, I think a lot of you would be sitting at home and you'd be thinking, really? Yes.
It gives you chills. You literally have spine-tingling goosebumps when you see some of these laws and you're asking, who wrote them? Okay, fine.
We know who wrote them.
Somebody wrote them. We're men. We wrote them. We benefited. All right, let it go.
Because now the whole society cannot benefit until these laws are changed. We're going to take a quick time out. Olisa needs to absorb. He needs to absorb some of the things he's seen that many women are aware of, but many of us are not. We'll be right back and giving you sports and a few more things before we wrap things up.